Hello and welcome to the pilot episode of The Neutral Zone, a new channel where some of your favorite YouTube creators, and also Star Wars Explained, come together to discuss the most critical issues of our time. And today, the timing seems right to discuss Solo, a Star Wars story. I am Mark from the Templin Institute, and I am joined by, from the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, you know him as the Duke of Space, the Right Honorable Daniel from Spacedock. Dan, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks for having me.
Alrighty, and from the United States of America, the king of Star Wars YouTube channels, the explainer of all things, but Star Wars in particular, Alex from Star Wars Explained. How you doing?
Good, and I can only do Star Wars. There's not much else I know about.
Oh, okay, well, I tried to throw you a bone
It was
there,
nice of you,
fair enough.
But I just wanted to be open and honest.
We appreciate that. And from the wild coasts of British Columbia, my business friend, the voice of the Institute, Larissa.
Hi, I've been upgraded to a business friend now. This is great.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, sure.
And lastly, and probably also leastly, from the blood-soaked wastelands of the post-apocalyptic hellscape that is Nova Scotia, Justin from EckhartsLadder. How you doing?
I like how you called it a pilot episode. I don't know if that was intentional, but it works.
Well, I figure this is going to be kind of rough, so we can get that label out of the way
it's
now.
Han
Also,
Solo
about
is a pilot.
pilots.
Yeah.
Oh,
God,
you're trying to be
you're
clever.
so slow. This is gonna be terrible.
Is that what we're talking about? Solo?
Off to a great start.
Yeah, I mean, if we mess this episode up, the series really is going to be Solo.
I'm leaving.
Hey, no.
I can't
Well,
handle
before
this.
you
I
do,
can't
though,
handle
for-
this.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I'd like to just jump in with our overall impressions. We'll start with you, Mr. Alex. So what did you think of Solo, a Star Wars story?
Yeah, I liked it. I've been telling everyone, and I guess I did my review earlier today as well, but overall, I liked it a lot. I thought it was a really fun adventure film. There were some things that kept me from loving it as much as I loved the original trilogy and The Force Awakens. Those are my top four. But I also feel like it's one of those things where the more I watch it, the more I'm going to like it. The same thing happened with Rogue One, where I came out of it and I was like, I don't know how I felt about that. And then I saw it a second and a third time and I was like, no, I really like it. So I suspect something similar is going to happen. But right now, really solid action movie. I just think that I kind of missed the galactic-wide consequences that... I don't know why I was expecting that from such a small movie. I don't know even if I was expecting it, but...
You actually wanted to see, like, galactic consequences? Because I loved that it was so contained.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's what I was expecting going in. All I wanted from it was a fun adventure with Han and Chewie, but still I was just like, it just didn't hit all the notes that I am used to with a Star Wars movie, and I think I need to get used to that.
Yeah, get over it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just deal with it, Alex. This is Star Wars now. If you don't like it, you can get out.
I'm trying.
It was like very inoffensive, like almost to a Marvel movie standard, which is fun, but it does kind of leave some of that, emotional connection like lost, I guess, which I think is kind of what you were saying.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. Unoffensive. It was safe, which again, that's all fine. Like, not every movie needs to be profound
totally.
and game-changing. Like, there's definitely room for small stories in Star Wars. It was just like, it felt a lot like some of the books that have been coming out in the new canon.
Absolutely.
Which, very self-contained, very personal story. And I was just not used to seeing that on the big screen, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think it was almost like a story undeserving of a movie? Like, this is a small-scale thing. We should reserve, like, the big stories for the movies, and this kind of upset that a bit, or?
I
don't know,
think so.
maybe. I think that movies should be able to tell those stories, and I think that this was a very well executed movie. And honestly, like, when I sit down and think of it, I can't think of anything where I'm like, well, that was just a huge misstep. There are a couple things here and there I didn't like, but overall, I'm like, I liked everything in it. It just, something felt a little off to me, and I don't know what it was.
Yeah, it's like, it depends how you feel about Star Wars. Like, if you want every movie to try to recapture that, 1977 feeling, then, like, this probably isn't the movie for you. Same with Rogue One. Like, if you're expecting, like, every movie to have, the Star Wars philosophy and, all of the things that make Star Wars great, then maybe this movie won't be one of your favorites. Same with Rogue One. But if you're really into, like, the universe, then maybe this is something that you want to see more of. Like I kind of see it almost as like the new expanded universe in a way. Like now there's more resources ever being pushed into Star Wars so they can expand the universe, not just through, novels and comics and video games, but also through these side movies. And I kind of enjoy it for that reason. But then when you actually watch it, you're like, yeah. Well, not everyone, but for me, I agree with you, Alex. It does feel like there's something missing a little bit.
Okay,
I think that's a good point, though.
I kind of want to discuss what that something missing is. Now, I come from a background of film and script writing, so I really like to think about story structure and how things are pieced together. And I spent a solid 3 hours after finishing Solo seriously thinking about what the theme of this movie was, and it took me a really long time to nail down kind of sort of what it was, but it seemed to be a movie about trust, and I don't think the movie ever settled on its own stance about trust. And I think that is the singular thing that was missing from this movie, is that there wasn't a cohesive theme tying it all together. It was just a bunch of fun action sequences and quippy dialogue.
And that you like, and that was that like the you say that's the missing element. Was it like the critical element? Like, did it still work for you, or was that missing kind of thematic element dragging the whole thing down?
I think I wouldn't say it was dragging it down, because the whole time I was engaged, I was invested with the characters, I was having a really good time. But I think it did minimize its own greatness just a little bit.
Well, it's funny because Justin, you brought up the original, A New Hope, and to me, this movie reminded me of that quite a bit. It was just like kind of a fun, snappy adventure.
Yeah. To me,
and I know Spacedock, you agreed with me. What was your thoughts there, Mr. Doc?
A New Hope. I thought this was the and one of the people I was watching this with at the time commented that this is like the closest a Star Wars film has come to that original kind of Buck Rogers sci-fi serial feel that A New Hope has, because like everybody loves Empire, but Empire fundamentally changed what Star Wars was. Before then, it was your space adventure, Buck Rogers, Blake Sevens kind of thing, and this really felt like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like the philosophy in the Force and stuff, it was really developed later, and it's like this is this universe, and you're right. I guess I didn't think about it like that, but that's interesting.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
The kind of the magic of the world, magic not being the Force, but the magic and the wonder of it was still present in Solo. The fantastical creatures and the random misadventures.
There was a moment in The Force Awakens, it's right at the end, where they have the map to Luke Skywalker, and Rey and Chewbacca and R2 are heading off on the Falcon, and they're departing that planet, wherever the base was, Dakar, I think. Yeah. And the original Star Wars theme kind of kicks up, and they're going off on the Falcon, and that, to me, like, the entire movie, the entire Solo, rather, reminded me of that scene where it's like you're going off on this adventure, and there's like a moment of kind of anticipation of like where things are going to go, and the entire movie kind of brought that out for me.
I think there was a theme that they kind of tried to develop. Like, I think they thought, and this is something I've kind of been thinking about and talking about with other people, and Wayward Jedi is kind of the one that presented this idea to me first, so I don't want to take credit for it, but I think that they very clearly timed this movie to be between 8 and 9, and I think that's because one of the main themes, and I think maybe one that's alluded to but not developed enough, is Han's goodness. Like, he's in this world that's terrible, and and he's with all these shady characters, but he's still, even though he's got that rough side, he still does what's right. And I think that's going to come in. I think that it's timed like this because that's going to play a big part in, in episode 8, we hear Snoke say to Kylo that you've got too much of your father in you. And they've got the focus on the dice in that movie. And I think that's why that's important. That's why Han's goodness is important, because that will somehow play into Kylo's redemption in episode 9. And that's something that, like, I don't want to take credit for that, because that's something Wayward Jedi talked to me about. I think he made a video on it too. But I think that was, I feel like they could have touched on that theme a bit more, because they say it clearly in your face, and there's also that moment where Han lets Chewie try to save the other Wookiees. But I don't know, that's kind of what I took away from it. And I thought that was
in
a pretty
to that
fun
kind of
thing.
thing. I really liked the Wookiee moment, but I thought it was a bit much when they like actually ask him if he wants to go off with the Alliance cell at the end, and he's like, "No, I don't hold your breath. I will never be an Alliance general and save." It's just like, tone it down a bit.
I kind of want to jump on that point too. So with Han's goodness, I think it was shown pretty well throughout the movie. There were a couple of moments where he made the right decision because that's just the right thing to do. But it never bit him. You know,
Agreed.
like by A New Hope, he's this very bitter, aggressive, cynical man. But we don't really get to see the moment that makes him bitter and cynical. And I think that's the moment that I personally really missed about the Solo origin story. Because I want to know what made him so distrustful of everything.
That's
and
a good point.
there's kind of a
because sorry, I didn't mean to.
there's kind of a moment at the end, and I guess we'll get to that later, maybe, where, you know, you could argue that that's the moment that he stopped trusting the goodness and stopped trying to help. And I don't think that moment had the emotional impact that it needed in order to really sell that.
I feel like the point. Yeah, I agree, and it's kind of an interesting comparing him to Kira, because she's like kind of the opposite. She kind of has the appearance of someone who's, you know, straight edge, when really she, you know, says as much, and we learn through her actions at the end that she's not the kind of person who's got a good heart. You know, she's kind of the person who will, you know, she's done all these supposed despicable things and she leaves at the end. And Han Solo, on the other hand, is like, you know, he is jaded, but we see in A New Hope and we see in this movie at various points that he still does have that good heart. And I was kind of, you know, waiting for that moment too, where, you know, like we don't even really see his reaction to her leaving. I don't think, anyway. And
No,
he just kind of looks at her.
Looks at it, yeah.
Yeah, actually, now that I
that's-
think about it, they set up the whole somebody's going to betray you thing the whole time. And then when it finally happened, well, there was kind of two sort of betrayals, one of which was sort of off screen and didn't matter that much, like he'd left and then it happened. And then the second time he sort of preempted it and solved it, and at no point did his trusting of people screw him over.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point that I was making, that, you know, that the theme of the movie didn't really come clearly because the actions didn't really drive the point home of you can't trust people, because his trust was never really shaken.
Yeah.
If I can jump in here, obviously there was a lot of behind the scenes turmoil and whatnot, like directors replaced, and I think the original screenwriters weren't happy with where they had taken the Han Solo character. So I guess my question, I'll start with you, Mr. Alex. Like, this is kind of like a Frankenstein movie. You have a couple different directors and all this stuff. Was there any scenes in particular that struck you as being, like this is what this movie is about, that the rest of the movie didn't quite deliver on, or by contrast, were there any scenes that just felt kind of out of place? Like, if you had to identify where this went wrong kind of in a scene or where it went right in a scene, what would you pick?
Man, this is going to bug me because I can remember having a thought of this scene feels tonally different from a lot of the other stuff. Like, I kind of felt like I caught something that was directed by Lord and Miller. And
yeah, I mean, because that was my sense too, but I could never really.
Now I can't remember. I think it was actually a line or two that just felt like it was improv, and that was kind of the scuttlebutt, was that they were trying to improv too much and they were getting off schedule. And there was something that Alden said that I was like, that is funny, but it feels like it wasn't written down. It feels like something he just said in the moment. But no, there wasn't a whole lot out of that movie where I was thinking that I didn't get the feeling that it was a Frankenstein movie.
Gotcha.
I felt like it was a lot better than it had any right to be.
I agree with you there, but I remember in the first couple scenes, and this is something that struck me, maybe I'm way off base here, it could even be this is what they intended, but a lot of the kind of background dialogue seemed a bit forced, like just trying to guide you along with the plot, and I was wondering if that was maybe a result, because in the first couple scenes, I think you'll hear background characters say something like, what was the name of the lady who ran the syndicate on
Lady
Corellia, that
Proxima.
weird slug lady?
Yeah,
Lady Proxima. So you have characters be like, Lady Proxima is not going to like this. And it was just really kind of...
That's been the case with
over-delivering
every
the
Star
setting.
Wars film, though. Star Wars has
Yeah,
not
that's fair.
been the most graceful when it comes to exposition.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know, maybe it just struck me as a little more clumsy this time.
What's
around.
that line in Rogue One? What is she suggesting? That dude.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Although Rogue One had the same, more or less, issues here, so maybe that's more evidence for
maybe.
my case.
did any of you guys find that the thing that I found most jarring by far, and it was early on in the movie, so it gave me a really bad impression moving forward, was when they switched, when Han leaves Corellia and then he goes, I think it's Minbin he goes to right afterwards, the battle. And I don't know, that battle scene I thought was so messy and just really, really bad. I thought the dialogue was bad. I thought the fact that everything was foggy and like you couldn't see the enemy they were fighting, I thought that was bad. That to me, like, I'm wondering if any of you guys felt this way, but that to me was like, yeah, maybe there was a bit of turmoil here.
Okay, it wasn't Star Wars. However, I really liked that they went all Saving Private Ryan with it. Excuse me.
Yeah, I didn't have any problems with that stuff. I mean, I kind of think it might have been more interesting for him to have actually been in a situation as a TIE fighter pilot rather than just
Agreed.
ending up as an infantryman. But I didn't have any real problems with that battle. I actually quite like the fact that they concealed the enemy because it's just some miscellaneous planetary defense force from some people that are being subjugated or whatever.
Yeah, I liked the way that scene was shot. Like, I thought it was really reminiscent of Rogue One and just how intense it was. But what bothered me about that scene was the way they introduced Beckett and his kind of crew. It seemed a little weird. Like, it seemed completely obvious that...
I didn't quite
they
figure
weren't
out
part of the
at
army.
first, Yeah.
Yeah, that's...
Oh, really?
Like,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like
Yeah, I
when
didn't
they
clue
first
in
turned
on
up,
it
I was
either.
like, are these guys privateers or something? Like, they're wearing uniforms, but they're obviously not, like... And then they start acting as if they're pretending to be soldiers. And I'm like, oh, that was them pretending to be... Like, he was doing all this gunslinging and stuff, and it's like, they weren't blending in brilliantly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
their introduction I thought was a little weird.
I was wondering why, like, you seem like you're a little gung-ho and in the thick of the fighting for someone who's just on a job. Like,
Definitely.
lay low a little.
Yeah, it was cool that we got to see the Imperial Army, though. Like, not just stormtroopers. Like, these are, like, the grunts who
Well,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
Navy
get slaughtered
troopers.
in
Is that what
mass.
they are?
Sorry?
Are they Navy troopers? Is that what they are? Like, because they talk about Navy troopers in the Thrawn book quite a lot. Is that what that's supposed to be? Like,
Yeah, I'm not sure if they
If
were
they
the
were, I didn't
Imperial
pick up
Army
on
or
it.
the Imperial Navy.
I think it was Army.
Oh, yeah, they were Army because Han Solo even says, you're not Imperial Army, you're
okay.
on a
yeah.
job or whatever. So I want to get more into spoilers, but let's leave that to a little further on. What I would like to ask, and I'll start with you, Mr. EckhartsLadder, because I know this is your kind of deal here. How does this story compare to Han Solo and Legends? Because I have no clue how he met Chewbacca and did all this stuff originally. Like, was
Yeah,
this close
so-
or was it way off base?
It's in Legends. I mean, it's been a while. I know Alex just did the huge Han Solo review on his channel, which was great. But like Han was a very good Imperial in Legends, from what I remember, and the way he encountered Chewbacca is much different. And after that, I don't think there's a whole lot of similarity. I think instead they kind of threw the expand, and I was fine with that because those stories are pretty hit and miss. They're fun to read, but to have that be a full movie, I think, and that's the same with a lot of the old expanded universe. But they did throw us a bone by giving us a lot of non-intrusive, non-offensive Legends or references, which I know has been one of the really big talks among fans after the movie. And I think a lot of people complained about Dr. Evazan. He was kind of ham-fisted in Rogue One, and there were some other references, but I think this movie did a really good job of kind of organically introducing things and introducing things in a non-offensive way. And there were even...
Sorry, I was just going to ask, like, do you think this improved on Legends, or was it, did you not like it as much as compared to the
one
original
thing
story?
I didn't like, and I was surprised, the whole Chewbacca life debt thing wasn't really a theme. I was expecting there to be a moment where Han, because after Chewie and Han escaped from the prison, Chewie was still kind of ready to do his own thing. So I was like, okay, it's not yet. I thought based on the trailers that they were going to rescue his family or go to Kashyyyk or something. I thought there was going to be a definite moment where they, formed that life debt, but this has kind of reestablished their relationship to a certain degree, at least as, more partners. Although I think, Alex, in life debt, like in Aftermath, like is the life debt actually a thing in canon now?
Yeah.
Or is it okay, it still is.
Is it
so
exactly
I was
the same
really
as it was?
expecting that.
Like in terms
Yeah,
of...
I was too.
So Alex, I'll ask you more or less the same question. Do you think this improved on the old Legends version of how Solo met Chewbacca, or you still need some time to figure that out?
I think I still need time to figure it out. Something that I have trouble with is, like, I feel like this may have also contributed to me not fully just being engaged by the movie is that like I'm constantly comparing it to Legends, and I'm trying not to, but I'm like I see how they meet in the movie, and I'm like, oh, this is different from how it was in canon, which is fine, but like I constantly have this dialogue in my head. But really, I think it did take, well, I don't want to say that it took a lot of the same beats from Legends, because I think that the Han Solo trilogy by A.C. Crispin, that was kind of working off of Lucasfilm's original notes for the origins of the character. So I think they were basically working off of the same origin story, and they are pretty similar if you talk just broad strokes.
Yeah.
Was there anything in particular that from Legends that when it didn't show up on screen, you were just like, oh man, like I wish they had included this one thing?
I would also say the life debt. Just I'm a little confused as to why Chewie is still with Han. If he made the life debt, if it was just like this unspoken thing to him, maybe he's just hanging out because they're going to go off and look for his family together, and we haven't seen the life debt yet. It's just hard to say, but it was something I was expecting to see in the movie and feel like they could have done it, but I guess they don't have to.
Yeah, as a layman, I mean, not being exposed to the Legends lore at all, I didn't feel like I was missing anything by not having experienced Legends. Like, it was still very friendly to a non-Legends audience. Although I do agree that, like, the reason why Chewie stuck around was a little ambiguous, but I always just chalked it up to, like, I like you. I'm just gonna keep hanging out with you, I guess. And then they're just a slow, natural bond forms, which is almost stronger in some ways.
That's definitely true. He's not there by like, because in Legends they get the life debt between the two like the second they meet. Mm-hmm. So it's like it's almost more, it's a deeper bond this way. And I kind of like in Aftermath, Han talks about like how I guess they do talk about the life debt in that book, and how the life debt almost did as much for him as it did for Chewie, and that kind of drives the fact that this is a mutual relationship between the two. Chewbacca is not a pet. He's a sentient being, and he's intelligent, and he means something to Han more than a dog would.
I actually saw something I liked. I think it was on Reddit, where someone pointed out, well, actually, Han might be more closely the dog in the relationship. Like, he lives a lot shorter than a Wookiee does, so it's kind of like Chewie taking care of this dog for the rest of his life. And,
So this isn't Chewie's first Han Solo. He's had others in the past, and they've all just died off.
I'm curious. One thing I didn't really like as much was how I thought Corellia would be more of a. That's one thing I liked more about the Legends portrayal of Corellia. It's kind of, I don't know. It wasn't really shown that much, but it wasn't the. I don't know. There's something about it that
it wasn't as memorable as a lot of the other places
like
in Star Wars.
Yeah.
This acts as a
kind of.
I think the way I am viewing it is that it was once a lot better. It's kind of like the way Lothal was, and then in Star Wars Rebels, the Empire comes, and it becomes terrible, and then once the Empire leaves, it becomes like its ideal version again. I think Corellia is probably right now completely under Imperial control, and it's just like this purely industrial, crappy place to be.
Mm-hmm. And I mean
sorry, I was going to say this works as a kind of good segue here, because the very first thing that annoyed me in this movie was I was looking forward to Corellia, because it was always like a normal planet, and then the one-dimensional, this is the frozen planet, this is the Pacific planet, this is the desert planet. It always annoyed me. So I'm like, okay, finally we're going to get something kind of normal. And then they introduce it in the film as the shipbuilding planet, which leads me to Mr. Spacedock. I was going to ask you, what did you think of the new ships in this movie? But you kind of got screwed here.
There aren't any. It's there's a TIE fighter with an extra gun pod, but aside from that, there's basically nothing.
So I guess I'll just ask you, like, how did Corellia look to you? Like, was it kind of what you were hoping for? At least, like, kind of seeing the industrial side of how these ships are built. Did that do anything for you?
I didn't have any issues with Corellia as a planet. It's pretty much what I imagined Corellia looking like during the Galactic Civil War. Like, I think our best looks at Corellia in Legends and stuff have been, like, pre-Episode 1 and stuff, where it's basically Coruscant without underground bits and bits of grassland between the cities. And this wasn't Coronet, the city in the film, so I think we can attribute it to just some more grungy industrial area. But yes,
Yeah,
It might have been Coronet. They do mention Coronet
that's where he
Spaceport.
says he's getting a shuttle to. So it's anywhere.
okay.
But,
I think that was. I'm reading the official guide right now. I think that city was supposed to be Coronet.
Oh, really? Okay, then. That was my mistake.
See, I would have loved to see the former glory of that city. It just kind of felt like a generic CG backdrop.
Yeah, that's exactly my problem too. Like the whole the whole Corellian system in Legends is like this very, they've got like the five brothers. It's this very unique system, and it's got like a very proud history. And same with Han Solo too, and that's like another issue that I know some people had with the movie. But it just, like Larissa said, it just kind of felt like, generic, like, industrial city, and that's supposed to be Coronet. I don't know.
And that's exclusive to this movie, isn't it? Like every other Star Wars film, that at least that I can think of, has really memorable places.
Yeah.
I should
think
say
that's
here,
part of the magic of it.
because we're 26 minutes into this, and we've said a lot of like negative stuff, negative sounding stuff, but I want to point out that I really loved this film, like really loved it. I think quite a lot more so than a lot of people might have, but it's just this is pretty much exactly what I want to get out of a Star Wars film. It was just this sort of, I mean, I hate to use the word fun because it's always sort of haphazardly stamped onto films in this kind of cynical way, but it was a lot of fun, and it was, especially with these anthology films, I just, like, that's what I want to get. I want a laid back kind of enjoyable experience, and I like that. I really like that it was almost entirely set on existing planets and locations and things, and I mean, normally I would always prioritize story over lore, but there has been like a noticeable issue in the sequel films and stuff of disposable settings and disposable aliens and disposable ideas that only exist for the duration of when they matter. And the idea of building a story that fits within the existing world building is very appealing to me.
I'm right there with you, because what I like about this film a lot is that it shows us a part of the Star Wars universe that we've never seen on screen before, which is just how normal people live their lives. Like, you don't get a sense of that, right? Like, you see Luke on Tatooine, which is some, fringe planet out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
And then everything else is either in space or just kind of in, like, out-of-the-way locations. So it was neat to see how just what living in the Empire is like.
Daniel, where would you rank this among your Disney-era movies? I'm curious.
Oh, this is my favorite Disney-era Star Wars movie.
Really?
Certainly, yeah.
Wow, that's high praise.
I'd say it's this and then The Force Awakens.
Yeah.
Well, if I could just drag us back into the mud, though, from all this endless praise you've been giving over this minute here. I did have one question for Mr. Spacedock here. How old is the TIE Fighter and Star Destroyer at this general point in time?
So the TIE Fighter will be, assuming the service date, the commissioning date remains the same from Legends, the TIE Fighter will be about 9 years into service at this point.
Okay, and what about the Star Destroyer?
The Star Destroyer, maybe slightly less so. I'm not sure off the top of my head, but they did use the Venator class for a while, and the Victory class is kind of ambiguous in the new canon. Maybe 2 years newer.
Okay, so I'm going to ask this to Alex, because I've heard you explain Star Wars from time to time. I need you to explain something to me. Okay, now, the F-22 is built at Dobbins Air Reserve Base in Georgia, I believe, and it's super secret. Like, you can't get anywhere near that because it's all this classified technology. So how come Han Solo and these people chasing him from some random crime syndicate can just burst their way onto an assembly line where they're building TIE fighters and looks like the shield generators for Star Destroyers? How come the Empire has no security there? Was that overconfidence, or was Han Solo and the criminals just that good?
I'd go with overconfidence more than anything. I think probably the entire planet is just devoted to building ships. So I think it was just about cranking out numbers, and, if you lose a couple, no big deal.
Yeah, that is the...
Okay, then the Empire is incompetent, because that's what annoyed me when they're just going by these, like, under construction warships and shit. And, like, how come no one's just stealing these things?
I mean, that's always been the Empire, though, isn't it? It's just build everything as much as we can, everywhere, all the time. Just anywhere there's flat ground, build a Star Destroyer. Like, that's always been the way the Empire works.
All right, so should we maybe delve into spoilers here now?
I'm down for that.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start with the big one that I know everyone's talking about. Darth Maul has returned. Larissa, you weren't a fan of this.
Audible sigh.
I was so jazzed about watching a Star Wars movie that didn't have any Force in it, and then all of a sudden we're bringing back Darth Maul, who was firmly dead, and now he's not, but he's...
Now, you haven't seen the Clone Wars or Star Wars Rebels.
No, and I'm
In which
talking
he's
from a
firmly dead,
non-Legends
but just Leia.
person. See, though...
Okay, because I'm interested in this, because Darth Maul is alive in canon again, but if you only watch the movies and haven't seen the TV shows like me and some folks of mine, or some friends of mine, that would be completely lost on you. So do you think his introduction was a little much, maybe, for those of you who, aren't up to speed on this stuff?
It was incredibly... it undermined Obi-Wan's victory in The Phantom Menace, and it also confused the crap out of me because he's nowhere in the original trilogy or the sequels. Like, he's just kind of pops up and is menacing and turns on his lightsaber. For why? Like, I would have much rather Kira been just evil, not working for some Sith Lord. I think that would have been way more impactful to the theme, which is one of my big complaints with the movie, is the inconsistent theme. And I think they're undercutting their own message by making her submissive to a Sith Lord.
That's actually, I'm really interested to hear you say that, because there are explanations for the points you brought up. Like, it does undermine Obi-Wan's victory, but they rectify that in Star Wars Rebels. So, Alex, like, did this feel earned to you, having seen all that stuff? Like, did this feel like it fit in the movie, or was bringing Maul back in this a bit much?
Well, first, I want to say, and this is a bummer, but this was the one thing in the movie that I was spoiled for. Just
me
because,
too.
Because someone, I feel like I would have really loved it, and I knew it was coming. It was still pretty cool. But yeah, knowing everything about Maul, and Larissa, I totally agree with you. I still kind of hate that he is back from the dead. When they announced they were doing it in the Clone Wars, I was like, no, that's so dumb. But all of his stories since he's come back have been wonderful. Like, I really like him as a character, despite what they had to do to get there. But yeah, he basically leaves the service of his master and tries to go off on his own and start his own criminal syndicates. So I was like, considering this movie takes place in the criminal underworld, it kind of makes perfect sense for him to be there. And yeah, it was a fun connection for me. And more, I'm just impressed that Lucasfilm went for it.
Oh, absolutely.
I've said over and over again in my videos, like, oh, guys, you can't expect, like, Ahsoka Tano or Grand Admiral Thrawn to pop up, because Lucasfilm knows that not everyone reads the books or watches the shows, and, like, they can't just throw something in there like this. And then they're like, boom, hope you watch the Clone Wars, Maul's alive.
Good luck.
And I was like, I couldn't believe that they did that, and I'm excited that they did, that they just trust the audience to figure it out.
Yeah, I fully agree there. It's completely altered my perception of how these Star Wars movies work now, because it's like the films were this isolated thing that, like, the lore was for certain people, and the films were designed in such a way that, like, the people who hadn't read into that stuff would not be confused. And to have such a central, massive, overt, expanded universe like reference that's so crucial to this film, it's amazing. I can't believe they did that, and I think it's great.
Crucial?
Like, I really enjoyed it.
Why the word crucial? He shows up and says a couple lines and almost sets it up for a sequel, and then like, I wouldn't really consider it crucial.
I mean, maybe not
I think what
crucial,
he
but
means is
certainly high profile. And if they do a
Okay.
sequel focused on that, then perhaps it will be crucial. But
Well, Spacedock, you mean that it's crucial to setting a precedent that the movies are going to start to integrate more with the books and TV shows, right? Like, because Maul is not critical to the plot.
no. But I certainly
definitely
hope
not.
they do
Okay.
start to incorporate the expanded universe into the films more. I mean, it's a pretty selfish thing to ask
like, do you
for,
think-
because it does only appeal to a very small percentage of people in the grand scheme of things. But I really would love that.
Do you think this was Disney's way of kind of setting the precedent of, like, yeah, we're going to be doing more of this from now on, so we're going to get this reveal out of the way, and you guys better start watching our TV shows?
I certainly hope so. That'd be great.
I don't have
It's-
time to
it's-
watch their TV shows.
Find
like,
the
it's
time,
actually...
Larissa. Watch the TV show.
Well, I still have to catch up on The Expanse. Okay, I got.
Don't watch
I
the
got
TV shows,
bigger
Larissa. Watch The
priorities.
Expanse.
Yeah, there you go.
It's
All right, so I want to move on. Just we've kind of touched on this before, but I guess we can reveal the fates of certain characters now that we're in spoiler territory. But Kira and Beckett, kind of the two central new characters they introduced here, and I guess we can touch on the villain Vision, whose name I forgot. Alex, let's start with you. What did you think of, like, the new people they introduced here? Did they live up to the standards set by kind of like the Star Wars legendary characters like Solo and all these folks and Chewbacca?
Beckett, I thought was pretty good. Something that I said in my review is that a lot of the characters, the new characters, I just felt like we didn't get enough time with them. Specifically, like Val. I think Val was my biggest problem because I love Tandy Newton, and I feel like she was kind of wasted. Yeah, she just wasn't in it much, and both her and Kira, I feel like we know that they are important to Beckett and Han respectively, but we don't know why. Like, we never got to see what makes them tick and why we should care about them. We just know about them through the lens of Beckett and Han. And so when Val died, I was like, I guess I don't care. I'm surprised, but I don't really care. And I don't really
Beckett
know.
didn't seem to care that much either.
Yeah.
He got over that pretty quick.
Yeah,
And I didn't
her
know Beckett well
sacrifice-
enough to be sad for him.
Her sacrifice seemed really meaningless. Like, why?
I was confident she'd come back.
Yeah, like it's not
Like it was a ruse.
unprecedented for people to come back from the dead or just like hang on to something and then get saved.
I mean, I have to.
Well,
when Enfys Nest took the helmet off, I did think it would be Val. Like initially, when
Yeah,
they
me
started
too.
the reveal, I thought it would be Val.
Well, her sacrifice at the time like didn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, why would you sacrifice yourself just for profit? And then later they reveal it's actually no. Like, if they don't get this money, they're completely screwed because Crimson Dawn's after them. But that was a little too separated, so I kind of forgot about that. So the entire movie, I'm like, yeah, she died for nothing. So
That's a
it was
good
only on
point.
further
I didn't even
reflection
put
that
that
kind of made
together, really.
sense.
Yeah, maybe
that's
that would have been a
that's
good time for her
observation.
to say before sacrificing herself, like, we've got to do this because Crimson Dawn will kill you. It's me sacrificing
They'll never
myself.
take me
Yeah.
alive.
Yeah.
Made it more clear
Yeah,
that
it
it
just
was
seemed,
for her compatriots rather than just because they needed to blow up a bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So what about I forget the villain's name? Vision.
Dryden.
Dryden Voss.
Dryden.
I liked him.
I was a huge fan of that guy. I
he
loved
was cool.
his going from like really cruel and kind of malevolent to this kind of like, hey, how's it going, buddy? Like, you feeling all right? You doing all okay?
Yeah, that was really cool.
I love that dynamic of this.
Like you
Yeah.
didn't want to say the wrong thing at any time. Like it felt like it would
It
be a
made him-
terrifying conversation to be in.
Yeah, it made him way more dangerous because it was almost unpredictable, but it was still like he wasn't unpredictable because, you know, if you piss him off, he gets mad. That's pretty easy logic to follow. But you don't know when he's going to switch. And that's the scary
Who's
part.
a guy of extremes.
Yeah.
He's either like really angry with you or he's like buddy.
Yeah.
He was very it was just the whole menacing tone, and his relationship with Kira was interesting in that, you know, he always had like his hand on her shoulder, like, but not in like
It was never
a
really
loving way. It was like
it was never really explained to me, or at least made clear to me, how that relationship was exactly. Like, did he buy her? Did he like?
yeah, it was
Yeah,
like,
she's
it
his
doesn't seem like
lieutenant,
she's
but-
ever had any kind of freedom. Like it seems like she's gone straight from being in service to the Proxima thing to being in
Yeah,
service.
well,
of
she
Crimson
said as
Dawn.
much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
she calls her, she's like they call her, or she calls herself a lieutenant at one point, which to me suggests that, you know, she's not it's certainly not a position of like, equal, but it's also not master and, you know, slave. I kind of saw it more as she's high up in his organization, but, you know, he'll kill anyone.
Yeah, it still seemed
So-
like he was like, you need to go with them and make sure this works, because if it doesn't, like, it still seemed like a threat to her.
Yeah.
No,
Mm-hmm.
totally. And at one point, I liked to, like, the thing that, yeah, his character was very, like, creepy, had been menacing. And at one point, he was like, oh, we'll talk about that. I don't remember what in reference to, but to Kira, and it was like, man, like, this guy he's not to be trifled with.
Oh yeah, I remember
Yeah.
that scene. Yeah.
His,
How does he in the Star Wars villain kind of pantheon? How does he compare to Krennic? Would you say? Did you like him a bit more, a bit less? What's your thoughts there, Mr. Eckhart?
to me, like, I love seeing the Empire, and I just don't think, even though the Empire is kind of boring and the same, I just can't find a crime boss as evil as someone like Krennic. I thought Krennic was interesting in a way too, because he's, you know, a very powerful man, but he's very insecure in a way.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
best
yeah.
thing about Krennic
and, like,
was
he
just
gets
how
beat around.
pathetic he was. It was
Yeah.
Easily, and yeah, he's
I
like,
love Krennic.
his
he's like one of
Napoleon
the old
complex.
Nazis in Indiana Jones.
Yeah, his Napoleon complex is really entertaining.
Totally.
Yeah, everything like he put a cape on his uniform, and he has to have a different shuttle, and he has to have this fancy sidearm. It's like, come on, dude.
And he tries to stand up to Vader for like or not stand up, but he tries to act tough, and
he choked.
Yeah,
on his
he choked out.
aspirations.
Yeah.
Voss was one thing I really liked about him is that he was some sort of humanoid alien, and they don't address it. He's got those lines on his face that grow red when he's angry, and his eyes change color.
Yeah, that was cool.
But they never. It's just like a little bit of neat world building, and because those could have just been scars, or it could have been he's this alien, and if he gets so mad,
Do we know that he's
it's
non-human? Because I kind of got the impression that might be some kind of spice or cybernetics or something.
Yeah,
I thought it was scars.
He is
that
classified as near human.
Okay.
He calls himself, the actor that Bettany in an interview said that my species just has these things on its face.
Right.
So.
Oh, okay, that's weird. I didn't pick up on that at all. I thought it was just like a scarred guy or something.
That's
Also,
probably
when
what
he
gives
died,
him
he
so much
turned
power.
very white too.
It's probably what gives him so much power as well over a lot of the more humanoid species, right? Is because he's like, you don't really know what he is.
Yeah,
Maybe.
Oh, so here's a point.
He was cool.
Actually, I was wondering, are we to believe that Crimson Sun is called Crimson Sun because it's been like made out of Black Sun, or Crimson Dawn?
Crimson Dawn, actually.
Because there's obviously a
Spacedock.
Black Sun allegory there, right? Like, and it's
Yeah.
foreshadowing for the Maul reveal, the whole Crimson thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have no idea. That's a good question.
I mean, their symbol looked kind of similar, only not as good.
Yeah, I don't know. I was surprised they didn't go with because if they really wanted to throw the angsty expanded universe fans a bone, they could have just made it Black Sun or any of the crime syndicates.
Speaking of,
are you going to bring up his little palace or room there with all the stuff?
No, but that's good. I just wanted to pose a quick question. Kira, I think, mentioned the 5 crime syndicates. So that's Crimson Dawn, Black Sun, the Pike Syndicate, the Hutt Cartel. What's the 5th one?
Is it the Exchange?
Wasn't it the Pike something? Did you mention them?
Isn't the
I said
Exchange
the Pikes.
mentioned
The Exchange
in
is
Battlefront 2?
Yeah, they might
Or
be.
Zerka? But Zerka's not really
Zerka's a
a crime.
Zerka's a corporation.
Yeah.
I can't decide what the 5th one is, and I just didn't know if anything jumped out to you guys.
Well, I mean, if you don't know, then I don't have a hope in
the
hell.
Exchange is the only thing that comes to mind. I don't know if it was that.
They haven't been mentioned much recently in canon, so I don't know. But that is a good one. I do think they are canon technically.
Well, speaking of those deep cuts, I was wondering, like, I'm not, this master of Star Wars like you folks are. What were some of like the references in this film that were kind of like the deep cuts out there for the true super fans? I know Boss got referenced in Scarif, and
I really loved the Terras Kasi. That was great.
Yeah, that was great.
And what is that for people who have no idea what that
is? It's the martial
is?
art for fighting Force users. And
there was a video game of it back in the day that was pretty terrible, but has a lot of
How
notoriety.
dare you?
Well,
You could play Jodo Cast in that.
But no, what else? Anything else? That,
there was a lot. Like
the big VCX 100 thing in the Sabacc game. That was great.
Not Legends, but one thing. That's
the Ghost is a VCX 100.
Yeah.
Okay, you got to tell me these things. I have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
There was also the Decraniated, which I thought was awesome from Rogue One, and there was just a lot of cheeky nods to Legends. Like I think Lando mentions all 3 of the events.
Yeah, he does. I loved that.
Me too. I probably squeaked to some degree, and I was like, oh, that's the thing to my buddy who doesn't.
I kept tapping Molly. I was like, that's a Lando adventure.
Did anybody else?
I'm completely lost. What are these things?
So Lando who wrote the Lando Calrissian back in 1980? I think it was. Man. Calrissian got a trilogy, and they're all in each one of the books. They're incredibly he meets long dead alien races. Mythical devices and things like that. Like they're all very crazy, and he mentions all 3 of the events by name. I only caught Sharu. He says something about Sharu.
He said going to the Ocean. He said he was in the Temple of the Sharu.
Which was awesome because that's actually what happens in the book.
And then he mentions the nebula that he's in.
Flame Winds Yeah, right.
Well, let's get to the big reference that kind of drove the film, the Kessel Run. How did that compare to Legends, and like did it kind of live up to the
I love
expectations?
the resolution of the
based on it?
parsecs issue. It was great.
I
Yeah.
did too.
Yeah.
I love that it's only important to Han. Like, he immediately turns to someone, he's like, just did the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs, and the guy just walks away.
Yeah, that's great.
And like, because something that I have always liked was that in the original script, it was kind of supposed to be Han just
BSing.
yeah, BSing, and Obi-Wan rolls his eyes. But now he's telling the truth, kind of. He's stretching the truth, and Obi-Wan just doesn't care because nobody cares but you.
Yeah.
And yeah, the whole like, it is if you round down, buddy. And then jump to A New Hope, and he says it's less than 12 parsecs. So he just keeps stretching the truth a little more. I love it.
I like too how it wasn't just him. Like, it wasn't him piloting the Falcon. It was, using navigational data. It was the whole team coming together to put the whatever that element was in the Falcon's engines. And so it wasn't like Han's like, oh yeah, I made the Kessel Run, or the ship that made the Kessel Run. But really, it was more like, this is a badass crew.
Oh, that
Yeah,
was
the
another
team
big-
that made the Kessel Run.
Yeah, that was another big introduction in that they made hyperfuel into a big thing, which is kind of like a repair job on The Last Jedi's strange obsession with fuel.
I did think that was funny that people are like, since when is fuel in Star Wars? And then they're like, yeah, we're just doubling down on
More
that.
fuel, all the fuel.
Fuel's a thing now. Someone really likes Mad Max.
Did the rebellion on Kessel? How did you like that? And especially, I forget the name of the droid. L5, I believe.
L3.
I really
L3. Okay, how did the droid rebellion and that
was
whole
quite
sequence
fun.
I
go for you? Did you
loved
enjoy that?
it.
Yeah,
I
the
thought it was
dog
hilarious.
droid
I love-
stamping on the terminal was
I-
probably the funniest thing I've seen in a Star Wars movie.
Yeah.
I love the idea of an accidental rebellion. It was so great.
Oh, I really love the.
I don't know, just
the
go
one-
free your friends or something.
I really love the one scene
really liked
between
L3
L3
too.
and Kira in the cockpit. That was really funny.
I think people are missing the point with her, and like, I don't know, like I feel like she was supposed to be like, people are like, it's supposed to be some sort of message, but I think it was kind of the opposite. Like, she was supposed to be an exaggerated caricature who makes everything about droid rights. Like, I think that was supposed to be. I think it was supposed to be the butt of the joke.
It was mostly played for laughs.
Yeah, same with the Lando
think,
and the droid thing, and it was like,
Do you think someone programmed that into her as a joke? Like, hey, I'm gonna make this droid, and I'm gonna make it like all about droid rights. Like, do you think?
I think
someone did
droids
that
just
to her
get
as a-
wonky
Yeah,
after
if
a
you don't
while.
regularly
if you don't
memory
do
wipe.
memory
Okay.
wipes. Yeah.
Well, we've
my
had
thinking was,
plenty
who would
of
program this?
We've had plenty of sassy robots in the Star Wars universe.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they can avoid the sass.
No, I don't think so either.
Alright.
She wasn't as funny as K2SO, but I thought, I don't know, she was a different character. Like, droid rebellions have been in so many, like, it's a very old idea in Star Wars. It was mentioned in various comics and IG-88, and so I don't know. It was fun, and it was supposed to be exaggerated. Like, she wasn't supposed to be like a normal character. Like, she was supposed to be wonky. I don't know. I thought she was pretty fun.
I assume the the little sort of circular glass screen thing that they ultimately put at the back of the cockpit that her brain is in. I assume that's actually like a part of the set from the original films that you can see. Like, they were going back to make that.
I'd have to
something else.
look.
That was a cool connection, though.
Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah.
It makes me want to go back, and anytime they're talking to the Falcon, quote unquote, I want to revisit
Yeah.
that.
I don't know if I like that, and I don't even have any legitimate, criticisms to level against it. I just didn't like it.
Fair.
Yeah,
It's
I think my thing with it, there's that line in Empire Strikes Back, I think, where C-3PO is like, your ship has the most peculiar dialect. And I always like thought that like the Falcon was like kind of this like drunk, like sassy sailor that was always swearing at him or something. So the explanation that it was just kind of this droid that was all about droid rights. It
Also,
kinda took
kind
away
of a
from that.
drunk, sassy sailor
Yeah.
type.
Well, in Legends, the Falcon's computer was the brains of 3 slicing droids welded together.
Oh, that's pretty good. But on Kessel, and as we wind down here, I do want to just bring up kind of where we go from here, in the whole Star Wars franchise. But there's this moment on Kessel that really struck me, and it's where I think it's during the sequence where Lando is rescuing that droid and he gets shot, and then like Han like runs over, and there's the shot of just the two of them, like both blasters in hand, and Lando's looking all flashing that yellow suit of his, and Han, and I'm like, damn, that's Han Solo and Lando, and that's like I want to see an entire movie of just them. So I guess one of my final questions for you folks is going to be, like where do we go from this movie? Like, does this movie prove that Star Wars can tell stories about its random characters and less kind of galactic importance events like this, or should we stick to the main series? And I'll start with you, Mr. Alex.
Well, first, since you just brought it up and said, like, yeah, that is Han, like, I wanted to say, because I don't think we have it all, I thought Alden was fantastic. Never once.
That's true.
Never once did I think, nah, that's not Han.
Yeah, he was great.
Like, I thought he was wonderful. Yes, I 100% think that there is room for these smaller stories. I think I need to just get used to it, but also I want Lucasfilm to get farther away from the main saga and explore things that were never explored in Legends. Like, I want new stories because that'll just make it easier for me to get wrapped up in a new story and not have all of this like background noise in my own head.
Yeah, I think actually my dream for a Star Wars movie is something that's never going to get made, but I think it would be really cool if someone just tried it. And just do a detective kind of like film noir story set entirely on like Nar Shaddaa that has nothing to do with whatever we think Star Wars might be, but just a detective story in that world, like something really small scale. And I think as soon as like Star Wars can pull something like that off, it could do anything, right? Because then like the universe is big enough for those type of stories to be told.
People have to be like, I'm very critical. I'm not the biggest Marvel fan, and I think movies like Ant-Man in Marvel kind of like show that different types of movies can be made within the same universe and still contribute. And I think, kind of like Alex said, Star Wars is getting to that point where not every movie is going to be in the epic clash between good and evil. Some movies will just be made because they're fun and they're within a universe that we all love. And I do think that, especially with the introduction of Maul and how everything's trying to be a bit more interconnected, that Lucasfilm is looking at what Marvel is doing, and they're trying to, maybe not to the same extent, but they're trying to make their own interconnected universe. And it's kind of like in Avengers how they bring back the Red Skull or whatever his name is, or the Crimson. I'm not a huge comic book guy, but it's
Red
like
Skull. You got it.
If you know this, you know this. If you don't, or if you forgot what happened literally 17 or 18 movies ago, like, that's how it's going to be. We're still going to do it. And I think that would be a really good place for the Star Wars franchise to go, because one of the property's strongest, if not the strongest aspect of it all, is how interesting and fun and loved the universe is. So if we can kind of express that in new ways, I'm all for it.
Well, I imagine that they saw the popularity of the Legends canon, and they were like, you know what? This actually doesn't seem like a bad idea. And then couple that with the success of Marvel, and they're like, yeah, sure, let's do it.
But Larissa, did that work for you? Like, I know you're kind of the outsider here when it comes to like Star Wars fandom. Like, does this movie make you want to see, like, I don't know, the Darth Maul movie that they might announce, or like the Underworld movie or something? Like, did that do anything for you? Or
I would absolutely watch a
movies?
Lando movie.
Oh,
I
me too.
would I would absolutely watch another Solo movie, but I don't know if I'd watch another Darth Maul movie. Like, it would entirely depend on which movie they did and how critical it was that I watched all of the other movies around it. If they were all,
what if they announced something?
If they were all small, insular stories that didn't really feed into each other that much, then I would probably really, really like it. But if you have to watch them all in a specific order every single time, I don't know if I can really get into it, because that's my biggest problem with Marvel, is the whole you have to know.
Yeah, I hate that kind of mass crossover thing. Like, I feel like spin-offs should be self-contained. You can have references, but when you get to the point where it's relying on other content to work as a story, then I lose all interest.
I don't have a problem with it in like small doses. Like Rogue One, you have to know the context of the rest of the story in order to really appreciate it. But I wouldn't want that with every single new spin-off, Like a Rogue One every once in a while, plus a bunch of little smaller stories, totally down for that. Because then I can pick and choose and do it a la carte.
There needs to
You'd be more likely to watch a movie if it was called like, Blim Blam, the Space Pirate, instead of like Maul, the movie. So you want kind of stuff that you can just go into fresh.
Yeah. Because the stories are the same irrespective of their universe. It's just like, you plunk it into Star Wars and then it's good. But I want to have the freedom of being able to pick the Star Wars movie that I watch in the order that I want to watch it.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I think there's going to need to be a paradigm shift. Maybe this is already happening in Lucasfilm, but it needs to happen among fans too. Because if they start making a lot of these movies, you know, my dad is, you know, he might care about Han Solo, but if they make Admiral Akbar a Star Wars story, like that's probably a movie that he's okay with skipping, you know. So they've got to. Marvel is, again, I kind of go back. There's like a property that realizes this. If they make Avengers, everyone is going to be interested. If they make, you know, Ant-Man, there's probably, or Guardians of the Galaxy, there's probably a whole section of just the general population that doesn't care. So fans need to realize that not every movie is going to be the, you know, $1-2 billion blockbuster. And I don't know if Lucasfilm is okay with that on their end. It seems like they might be. But I mean, we see, you know, they've got a new trilogy coming out, completely apparently unrelated to the main trilogy, and they've got another saga coming out too, the Rian Johnson one, and I forget who's doing the other one. So it seems like they're going all in on moving away from just the Skywalker saga and moving towards. So. Yeah. Me too. Yeah.
Yep. Well, I want to wrap things up kind of quick here, but I did want to actually bring up one thing, and you kind of touched on it, Mick Eckhart. So one of those Star Wars TV shows is being run by the guys behind Game of Thrones. I think it's David
Benioff and D.B. Weiss.
D.B. Weiss, yeah.
Okay, so here's kind of my conspiracy theory, and I want to know if you think there's anything to this.
Sweet.
They're setting up Kira as the leader of Crimson Dawn. Daenerys Targaryen, whatever her name is, has experience working with those two directors in Game of Thrones. Do you think that show might be centered on her, and they brought her in specifically for this because she can then go on to do
like
a series?
A big like Godfather-style crime empire series.
They're doing a movie series.
You don't cast someone just to bring in directors later. That's not how that works.
But you don't think in the discussions they were like, you know, we're looking for directors for
No, that's not how that works.
Maybe I'm completely off base. Okay, well, just yell at me. It's fine.
No,
I don't know. I just thought it was a weird connection there, so I thought I'd bring it up.
It's funny, and they probably looked at it and were like, it's interesting, but it wouldn't be the deciding factor. That's just...
Okay, but what if they brought in David, what if they brought in the Game of Thrones guys, and they say to them, hey, we want to do this Han Solo movie, and we want Han Solo's love interest to then be the main character of the three movies you're going to do. Do you have any recommendations for an actress? You don't think that might play into things at all?
I don't know.
Oh.
I really hope that their series is like so far disconnected. I mean, they even said that it was going to be all new characters, all new events, like not connected to anything in the original saga.
It feels like the tightest request ever, but where's my Knights of the Old Republic series? Give it to me.
Yeah, like I'm right there with you. Like I get tired of the people going like, well, we want Knights of the Old Republic. It's like, oh, yeah, we all do, but just give it a second. Like we don't know what Johnson's doing. We don't know what Benioff and Weiss are doing. It could be anything. And you know what? I was in the official guide. Here's me just like throwing fuel on some insane fire. But in the official guide, it goes through Dryden's museum, and the Mandalorian armor he has is specifically said to be a near complete Old Republic, like Mandalorian rally guard or something like that. So if Lucasfilm is over here thinking, oh, well, what does the Old Republic Mandalorian armor look like? We need to finalize that. Maybe they're thinking about future Old Republic stuff.
Well, I mean, there were other references to the Old Republic too. Who was it that they mentioned? What Old Republic? Who created the Starforge again? I'm gonna get
the
Ricotta. Yeah, the
Ricotta. Right? Yeah, they're mentioned.
Even I knew that. It's the people with the bad cheese name.
They're mentioned by name in the book.
Yep.
And so yeah, and like it's very early on. Like people have to realize this. We're very, very early on in the Disney era of Star Wars.
It's the fourth movie.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
we knew that 3 of the first 5 were going to be a sequel trilogy. We're still getting the movies that we knew were going to happen from day one. Mm-hmm. Like once Episode 9 is out, then we can see what comes. And I guess we're getting a Boba Fett movie, but
yeah.
And I still think we're getting Kenobi.
Before we get too deep down the rabbit hole, I think we should probably maybe close things up here a bit. So I'll start with you, Mr. Alex. I guess just want to know, like, overall thoughts, any closing thoughts you had on Han Solo, and just anything else you'd like to mention about the movie that maybe we didn't touch on yet.
Yeah, overall, like, again, I really, really liked it. I think I'm probably going to like it more and more as I see it and as I have to associate work with it less. But right now I'm sitting at about a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10.
That's pretty good. And Mr. Eckhart, how about you?
Yeah, I'm probably about a 7 or a 7.5. I think I liked it a little bit less than Rogue One. It might be my, depending on how I feel about The Last Jedi that day, it might be my least favorite of the Disney canon, but it's probably my third favorite. And, I've liked every movie so far, besides for some days I don't like The Last Jedi. But yeah, I think 7.5. And
Okay.
I watched it with my buddy Alex. I'll give him a shout out. I asked him, he said the exact same thing. And, I'm cool with that. It was a fun movie. So.
And Larissa, where are you on the scale?
I'm going to say something a little different from y'all. I actually liked this the most out of the Disney canon, mostly because this is the one that didn't feel bloated. Like every
Yeah, I
other
agree.
Disney canon film was just so obese under its own pressure. Whereas this one just had a really nice simplicity that you could just turn off your brain, sit there, watch the movie. Maybe you overanalyze it later, but that's okay because you're recording a podcast. But it's just nice fun. I didn't have any complaints while I was watching it. With Rogue One, I had so many complaints while I was watching it. And same with Force Awakens and Last Jedi. Like just while I was watching it, I was out of my head.
Yeah, I completely
Or
agree.
in my
My,
head.
my,
And,
my opinion echoes that quite a lot, I think. I don't think I have the same standards for Star Wars movies that a lot of people have, because I watch a whole hell of a lot of science fiction, and I think in my mind the job of Star Wars is to be what Larissa has just described. It's your science fantasy mainstream enjoyable film series, and I feel like sometimes it flies apart under its own weight and under the pressures of the conflicting requests of fans and things. And I'm happy to see especially an anthology movie that just does the job in the way Solo did. I really loved it. It was definitely my favorite Disney Star Wars film.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you on this one with Solo. I just kind of got lost in it, and you kind of forget you're watching a movie and you're just wanting to see where things go. So if I had to rate it, I'd say like 8 out of 10. Maybe I like it even more than Rogue One. So yeah, if no one has any other thoughts, should we just end this here?
The asteroid chase
Oh
was
yeah,
awesome.
and when the music kicked
Yeah,
in,
that
when they
was
kicked
awesome.
in the
the music
great.
cue, that was the most fun I've had in a long time. Sorry.
So we all agree the music was great, and that'll bring us to an
Infuse
end
nest.
here on the Neutral Zone. Bringing you episodes every now and then. We'll have to see what the response is like. But if you'd like to see more of this, please let us know in the comments to this video. And if you'd like to see any additional guests in addition to all of us, let us know that as well. Until then, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.